Welcome back to part 6 and our last video of the week and our introduction to high leverage practices, explicit instruction, and writing conditions for IEP goals and objectives. All right, let's just think about IEP goals again. So what I want you to remember is that IEP goals, oftentimes called long-term goals, because that's what they are long-term. These are those broad goals, those broad skills that we anticipate students are going to be able to achieve, to master within the life of that IEP. So we're thinking about that year that the IEP is in effect, and we anticipate that the student will be able to achieve that goal within that year. Again, big, broad, long-term goal. And then we also have objectives. Sometimes they're called short-term objectives. You might also hear them referred to as benchmarks. And these are those small, measurable steps that are going to lead to the achievement of that overall goal. So the goals are long-term and they're broad. They're the big skills or goals we want our students to achieve. And then the objectives are short-term and they are the small steps that help a student achieve that goal. Just a reminder that in class we are going to play a game called Condition or Not, and that is exactly what it sounds like. Not only that, you are going to work in pairs, and I'm going to give you the student and the behavior, and you are going to write the condition. You're going to practice. This is us giving you the opportunities to practice, those opportunities to respond, and opportunities for active engagement. So in class is where we're going to really have all that active engagement opportunities to respond. You don't need to worry about either one of those right now. We will take care of those and do those together in class. All right, number 8 for your participation document. What I want you to do is to write in your own words what are goals and objectives. What's different between those two? What's the difference between them? And again, I want you to do that in your own words. This can be a great way for me to do an informal assessment of whether or not you're acquiring these skills and also do an assessment of my instruction. So after you write what IEP goals and objectives are in your own words, come on back and we'll talk about it together. All right, welcome back. So let's get ready to finish this up. So what I want you to make sure that you remember is that goals and objectives tell us what a student is going to be able to do after we provide instruction. Doesn't happen until after we provide instruction. These are what our final results or outcomes we're shooting for. And so when you're writing IEP goals and objectives, you're going to write 3 different types of goals and objectives. One is going to be called knowledge or content goals, and we'll talk about these a little bit more in just a second. You're going to write skills goals, and then you're also going to be writing behavioral goals for your students. And I also want to make sure that I just point out that IEP goals are not activities. We're not saying the activity a student is going to engage in. We are talking about after I teach you, this is what I want you to be able to do. So we focus on the outcomes, not the activities. All right, so the other thing is that when you're writing IEP goals, you need to make sure that they are precise. I cannot tell you how often in your career you are going to inherit an IEP and you're going to look at a goal and you're going to say, I have no idea how to assess this or what I'm supposed to teach because it is not precisely written. So you need to make sure that when you're writing IEP goals that they are focused and that the focus is clear, that I and anybody that picks up that IEP can very clearly see what the student will be able to do once they receive that specially designed instruction. And they need to be clear and focused because that's what guides your instruction. That's how you know what you're going to teach that student. Not only that, they provide like really shared expectations. When you write really precise goals, parents are able to understand what the student will do. The student's able to understand what they're supposed to do, and then all the members of the IEP team as well. Not only that, when you write IEP goals, oh, we got a bug flying around me. When you write IEP goals and objectives that are precise and you have those really clear outcomes, and it makes your progress monitoring easy because I know exactly what I'm supposed to assess, and I'm going to make sure that my instruction and my assessments align with that IEP goal. Then I can progress monitor on a schedule, and it helps you to assess mastery. Remember, I said there have been goals I have received, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to teach this child because it's not clear. And if I don't know what I'm teaching or what the final outcome is, how am I able to assess mastery? So remember, they must be precise. It's so important and so helpful to you as a teacher. And it clearly defines what the student is supposed to learn and be able to do. So when you're writing IEP goals, there are three different types of IEP goals that you're going to write. Now, I'm going to go through all three of these right now. And then afterwards, I just have a little infographic that has it all spelled out easily, and there'll be a star on it. So that's what you want to make sure that you screenshot. So the three types of IEP goals and objectives. One type are called knowledge or content goals, and those focus on what a student is supposed to know, what they will learn, what they will know once they receive instruction. So examples would be things like history facts or science concepts, health information, or even like the characteristics of different artists. And the whole purpose of content and knowledge goals is because we're building a foundation. We're providing that background knowledge that is going to support students' learning in the future. So again, content and knowledge goals are related to what a student will know. Next, we have those skill goals, and this is really focused on what a student will do. So it could be things like reading fluency, being able to solve long division problems, writing a 5-paragraph essay, or summarizing an article that they've read. And these are super important goals because these are skills, things that students will need to do across contexts. There are things that students are going to need to, for example, let's look at, let's just say solving math problems. Students are going to need to do that in school. They may need to do it in their job. There may be activities they engage in daily life or in the community that they're going to need to be able to solve math problems. And again, when we're doing an IEP that's going to be very precise, we're not just going to say math problems. We're going to be precise in saying what kind of math problems. Then you're going to have behavioral goals, and this is all related to how students will act. So we want them to be able to follow directions or work with peers or use respectful language or stay on task. Again, when we put this, we're going to be very precise in our language and the language that we use. So we might not just say, follow directions. It might be that they're going to follow directions within 3 seconds of the within 10 seconds of the direction being given. And the reason that the purpose of behavioral goals is because when students engage in appropriate behaviors, then it provides a positive and a safe learning environment, and it supports social interactions. Because I'm sure that we have all seen, know, or have worked with students who have gaps in their behavioral skills, and that's impacted things like friendships or the safety in the classroom. And so here is that infographic that I told you about with that star up in the corner of the three types of goals and objectives. So you have content goals, which are what students will know, skills goals are what students will do, and then behavioral goals are related to how students will act. Let's go ahead and take a screenshot of that. It's great little infographic to keep for later on. All right, we had also talked about previously the components of an IEP goal. I'm going to go over those just very quickly because remember, starting today, we are addressing each one of these components individually, starting with the condition. But when we're writing an IEP goal, there are numerous parts. There are 6 different parts to an IEP goal. And it's important that you have all of these components when you write your goal, which is why I ask you to use that general template initially until you are proficient in writing IEP goals, because all of these are important in order to describe the skill that the student is going to engage in and to know know how we're going to measure progress and what timeline that is anticipated to occur within the mastery of that goal. And so here are the 6 components of an IEP goal. First, you have the condition, and remember that's the circumstances under which the student will demonstrate the behavior. You have the student, because we need to know who this goal is for. Then you have the behavior, that is the specific skill that you want the student to learn and be able to demonstrate. You have the criterion, which is the level of mastery, and we have our level of performance, remember, and we need that demonstrated across time. You have your time frame, and that is the amount of time that we anticipate within or by this time period. This is the time that we anticipate the student will master the goal. And then finally, we have our evaluation measure or procedure, and this is how we are going to measure and monitor students' progress and determine whether or not they have mastered the goal. And so again, we want to make sure that we're using this template because we can ensure that you get all 6 components in the IEP goal as you write it. And then as you become more proficient, if you need to, we can make some adaptations to it because this is not the only way you can write an IEP goal. But today, what we're going to do is we are going to focus on the condition. So let's talk about that. Well, let's look at this one. What is the condition under which a student is going to, in this case, solve double-digit addition equations? Well, I can see what the condition is. Given a double-digit addition quiz containing 10 problems, that is the condition or the circumstances under which the student is going to solve double-digit addition equations. Given a double-digit addition quiz with 10 problems, John will solve double-digit addition equations. What is the condition? Given a double-digit addition quiz. All right, let's look at another one. Here is our condition. What is this? That is a break card is what that is. And so we might have a student who needs to take breaks and we want them before taking a break. We just don't want them getting off and tearing off and going to a break spot. We want them to let us know that they want to take a break. So what is the circumstances under which they're going to do that? Given a break card, that's our condition, given a break card, the student will hand the break card to an adult prior to going to the break spot. So we want the student to do what? Communicate that they need a break and then go to the break spot. What is the condition under which they're going to do it? When given a break card. So oftentimes this is Velcroed. In my case, it could be Velcroed. In my class, it could be Velcroed on the student's desk, and it would be Velcroed multiple ones throughout the class. So what is the circumstance? Given a break card. Let's look at another one. What is the condition here? Well, what I can see, that is not a bent and broken fork. That is what's called an adaptive fork, and it's for students who might need some type of support or adaptive equipment in order to feed themselves. So in this case, what is the condition? Given an adapted fork. That is what the student is given. And what do you think that they're going to do? They're going to, for example, take 3 bites independently. So what is the condition under which they're going to take 3 bites independently? Given when they are given an adapted fork. So again, we would start that with given an adapted fork. Samantha will take 3 bites independently. All right, let's look at another condition. Whoa, I see some shoes here. Also notice that those shoes are untied. Well, sometimes we talk about a tool. So let's say that the tool would be the adapted spoon, right? I mean, the adapted fork. That's a tool that we would use as a condition. But sometimes when we talk about condition, it's the amount of support or prompting that a student requires in order to successfully perform a skill. So in this case, let's say that instead of looking at the IEP goal, the IEP goal is that we want Juan to be able to tie his shoes independently, but right now we're working on one of those objectives, one of those small steps. So our condition might be that given a model, somebody's going to model while Juan ties his shoe. They're going to model how you do it. So given a model, Juan will tie his shoes. That is going to be the condition under which he ties his shoes. It's going to be when he is provided with a model, given a model. All right, here is another one. So this will be another one related to a prompt. So I can see that what the students are doing is they are lining up for recess. How do I know that? Because I see a visual prompt. So it might be that we're talking about Jane, and what we want Jane to be able to do is to line up with her peers to go to recess. And what we're going to do is the circumstances under which she's going to do that is we're going to provide her with a visual cue. So given a visual cue, Jane will line up with her peers in order to go to recess, for example. All right, and here is the last one. This is another condition. I can see because it says words read in 2 minutes that this is going to be a fluency test. And so what are the condition under which the student is going to fluently read? We're going to provide them with a grade level test. A grade level passage. So what is our condition? It's when given a grade level passage or given a grade level passage, the student will, not the student, Laura will read 100 words within 2 minutes. That's what our goal is. We want her to get to 200 words per minute. And how is she going to do that? What are the circumstances? Given a grade level passage. So hopefully that is making a condition a little bit more clear to you. All right. Star up in the top, that's going to tell you this is some important information. So when we talk about the condition, remember that it describes the content or the situation under which TSW is the student will. It tells us the context or the situation, the circumstances under which the student is going to perform the behavior. And so you're going to ask yourself, under what circumstances or with what materials or support does the behavior occur? And then that's how you're going to determine what the circumstance is. So it could include things like materials or tools. So given a worksheet, and then you would describe what the worksheet was like, and what it contained. Given an iPad, given a visual schedule, it's going to be related to materials or tools. That's one type of condition. Another type of condition can be related to the level of assistance or prompts. So given verbal prompts, or the student might do it independently, we need that stipulated. Or given modeling, or given a model of tying their shoes, for example. So conditions can be materials or tools. They can be the level of assistance or prompts. It could be the setting. There's sometimes that we want the skill to be performed in a specific setting. So for example, our student might use their AAC device to engage in two-way conversation in a self-contained class, but they're not yet doing it in their general education class. So our condition might be given let's say that they're saying, given inclusion in the general education classroom, Loretta will use her augmentative communication device to engage in two-way conversation with a peer, for example. So materials and tools, level of assistance or prompts, or setting. And then our final one could just be other context. So it might be time of day. There might be something that a student demonstrates in the morning, but they're not demonstrating it in the afternoon. It may be that we've been working with a student one-on-one and they're able to demonstrate that skill one-on-one. Now we want them to be able to transfer that into a group of 3, for example. So what I want you to do now, and I've got an example first for number 9, is you'll need to look back at the one you took a screenshot of, hopefully, to tell you about the different types of conditions. But here I have 8 conditions, and I want you to tell me what kind of condition is it? Is it a material and a tool? Is it a setting? Is it a type of assistance or prompt? And we'll do the first one together. So given a worksheet with 10 single-digit addition math problems, what is that? That is materials. And how do we know it's materials? It is because it is a worksheet. I know that is materials. Now, I also want to let you know, and if you look at the second one, sometimes they fall into 2 categories. So I'll go ahead and show you this one. Let me see if I click on this. This one could be materials, but it could also be prompts. And I should have that on here because they're given a grade level storybook and they're given visual prompts. So for this one, it would be materials and prompts. So I want you to stop your video now and then go ahead and respond to what type of conditions those are, and then come back and we'll go over them very quickly. All right, welcome back. So let's take a look at these real quick, all right? So given an iPad with the Go Talk Now app, That is materials or tools. Given no more than two verbal prompts, if you put assistance or prompts, you are right. Given modeling of the task, whatever the task is, that is again assistance and prompts. Given a small group setting of 3 to 4 peers, that is a setting condition. The next one, given recess with his 4th grade class. That again is a setting. Where is it? It's with the 4th grade class. And then the last one is giving a small group of 3 peers. And what is that one? That is other context because we're talking about group size. All right, let's do a quick self-evaluation. How are you feeling about IEP conditions? If you have any questions, please make sure you add them to your participation document and we will practice with conditions in class. All right, I will see you in class.